So, what is the BRICS group and why is it expanding? As BRICS grows in both membership and global sway, its expansion comes with divisions among its members, old and new, and how to set the stage for the revised world order. Okay, so in summary, the BRICS group has become a major political force and is, in the at least 2 decades, building its own desire to create a counterweight and national influence of global institutions. The group's expansions in 2023 and 2024 exemplified its growing heft, but also brought new disagreements on issues such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So what you're telling me is they don't actually care that Russia invaded Ukraine. Well, yeah, that would make sense. They're creating a whole separate group, separate from the United Nations, separate from separate from NATO, right? Trying to undermine the United States. Well, maybe not trying to undermine the United States necessarily. They're just trying to build China, but also in doing so, they're undermining the United States, okay? So the countries that comprise BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I was fucking right. Hell yeah. Definitely subscribe. I'm right all the time. As well as 5 new members are in informal grouping and emerging economies, hoping it's increase their sway in the global order. Yeah, like I said, they're forming a group full of other powerful nations, such as Russia and India, to name a few, because I don't think South Africa is really powerful in any way, unless Wakanda Forever is real, but I don't think it is. Western powers and... Okay, where are we at? Sorry about that. Established in 2009, BRICS was founded on the promise that international institutions were overly dominated by Western powers and had ceased to serve developing countries. Yeah, you know what? The big guy is too big. They don't care about us little guys anymore. So all the little guys are going to team up and they're going to go after the big guy, okay? They're directly coming after the United States, and we cannot allow this to happen. However, BRICS has struggled with internal divisions on a range of issues, including relations with the United States and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, its growing membership is both expanding its clout and introducing new tensions. Yeah, U.S. isn't going to make this easy. Are you kidding me? Also, the U.S., I believe, is shoring up ties with India as well. And to be completely honest with you, I think Russia and China will end up siding together. Just because they really have to. They're right next to each other. If they end up going to war, the first thing that's going to happen, China's going to swoop into eastern Russia. It's directly north of China. They're going to take all of the natural gas pumps that are there. They're going to take all of the oil repositories that are there because it's a really natural resource, like rich region. They're going to immediately take all of that. Russia's going to lose a majority of its power immediately, and they're probably going to end up losing. They'll be able to hit China pretty hard, and meanwhile, while they're both fighting each other, America will probably just blow them both up. So they really have no choice but to side with each other, unfortunately, because it's their best option. However, I don't think either of them is strong enough to take over the United States. So obviously there's some internal struggling there, and I do think that of all of them, India will probably end up siding with the U.S., just because it's what's best for India. I mean, if you want to talk about having a foreign manufacturing group outside of Mexico, India would be the place to do it, bro. They got all the people there. They just need the infrastructure and the money flowing in. So having treaties there, or having it as kind of like a overseas kind of quasi state of the United States, would be pretty good too. In 2025 summit in the Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, is set to take place July 6th and 7th, and will focus on the yada yada yada. It's already happened, but I don't remember exactly what happened. However, collaborations remain tenuous, as the leaders of both China and Russia have said they will not travel to Rio for the annual meeting. Oh shit! I believe they did, but I'm not sure. The coalition is not a formal organization, but rather a loose block of non-Western economies that coordinate economic and diplomatic efforts around a shared goal. They're basically a union for countries, okay? Let's be honest. BRICS countries seek to build an alternative to what they see as the dominance of Western viewpoint. Look, it sounds like a skill issue. If Western society is better, which it fucking is at this point, you might as well just become part of Western society. They can't beat them? Join them. Why not? I mean, listen, back-to-back World War champs, just saying. Western viewpoint and major multilateral groupings such as the World Bank and the Group of Seven and the UN Security Council. There's too many white people on these things. We got to kick them off. The group's 2024 expansion came with a range of geopolitical implications. It represents growing economic and demographic heft. The 11 BRICS countries now comprise more than a quarter of the global economy and almost half of the world's population. Yep. Yeah. Are we fucking paying attention yet? They're doing the right things to make this happen. We can't allow it. Growing membership also brings new challenges, however, including increasing pushback from Western countries and divisions within the bloc. Yeah, Trump's not going to let this bullshit slide. And listen, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Experts say that how BRICS memberships navigate those tensions will determine whether the group can become a more unified voice on the global stage. It is an economic union challenging the power of American corporate society. And while I'm not a fan necessarily of corporate society, you know what? I am. Listen, I'm sorry. I am. Look, they create all the jobs. The billionaires are the good guys. Let's just be honest here. Maybe they're not good like as people, but you wouldn't have a job if there wasn't a billionaire, okay? If somebody hadn't created Walmart, you wouldn't be able to work there as a cashier or a fucking bagger or a stalker, or at this point somebody like you're a shopper because people order their shit online and then you walk around and you put it all in the bag for them and then you take it out to their fucking car when they get there, okay? If somebody hadn't come up with that and become a billionaire because of that idea, you wouldn't have that job. So it's a kind of a give and take. If you have, what's the point of having fuck you money if you can't say fuck you? The term was originally coined to Goldman Sachs economic Jim O'Neill, yada, 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 yada. What does BRICS do? The BRICS head of state convene annually, with each country taking a one-year chairmanship to set priorities and host a summit. The bloc relies on consensus-based decisions, making it a largely informal. It has no funding charter. It has no defining charter, secretariat, or common funds. Okay? It is the early stages of a union. They show up. They go, okay, these are the things that we need. You need to hold off on America for that. You need to hold off on America for that. I'll hold off on America for that. And then that way we can all kind of get what we want. Because they can't take on all of us. Oh, boy. Okay, all right. All right, let's just move on. We've discovered what BRICS is. Now let's see what. This is a YouTube video from Bloomberg Originals. This is BRICS: The Rise of a New Global Order. Okay, we kind of just covered what the Council on Foreign Relations says about BRICS. Now let's kind of have it simplified down. This is like a 9-minute video. It's on YouTube. Definitely go and subscribe to him. Bloomberg Originals. He's got like 4.8 looks like million subscribers. This video I think might be a little bit older. It's about 3 months old, give or take. So it's not so old that it's not necessarily relevant anymore. Let's find out what they said. I would imagine they talked about what happened at the 2025 summit, right? So that we just covered in the Council of Foreign Relations thing. So let's see what he has to say, huh?
Reaches.
All right, let's restart.
This is a story about how the world's most powerful, richest country is slowly losing its influence.
Like
and
hell.
It's evident here.
You watch your tongue.
We can see across Brazil, thousands of Ford cars almost disappeared.
Meanwhile, China's BYD is becoming increasingly common.
Ford left a plant abandoned. BYD, they modernized the plant. They are now producing electric cars.
This is what I'm talking about. They were building like cars and shit for us.
From Brazil.
It's evidence of the growing connection between Brazil and China, the B and the C of the BRICS Plus coalition.
Yeah.
This is a group that hopes to rival the US-led G7.
Fuck you.
The most important emerging economies in the world are the four BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, and China.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
This mantra
America first.
America
has
first,
created
baby.
an opening.
I told you, Trump isn't going to let this happen.
The trade war increased the solidarity.
And he shouldn't. Listen, he's the American president, okay? He needs to do what is best for the American country. And if what's best for the American country is stopping this rise of a new global order, as Bloomberg here puts it, then that's absolutely what he should do. And I am fully behind him on that because, again, in the global game of risk, America really needs to win. When we're a spacefaring society, when we're a species that colonizes the stars, America is going to be under one fucking government, under one governing body, okay? Humanity as a whole will likely be under one governing body, and that one governing body needs to be a capitalist free society the way that America is, not a communist dictatorship the way that China is.
Solidarity between BRICS nations. The BRICS are now emerging as really the only global forum that can stand up to Trump's trade war.
They want a multipolar world in which there are multiple centers of geopolitical influence.
But can these countries unite to become a meaningful global force? To answer this, it takes an understanding of how economic power collided with circumstance and whether the group can overcome some big hurdles. But first, the acronym BRIC was coined in 2000.
Yeah, like whether or not they'll be able to actually do it without the U.S. Supporting them financially.
2001 by Jim O'Neill, who at the time was an economist with Goldman Sachs.
I thought,
Dude, I'm telling you, tariffs have fucking changed the economic landscape of the United States because these other countries have been relying on being able to sell shit for like cheap to the United States. To make shit for cheap, like from okay. So let me phrase this. The United States pays them to make shit, and then they sell that shit back to the United States for an additional profit. So basically, they make a lot of money right off of the back of the American consumer, and tariffs force them to pay a fee to sell that to the American consumer, meaning that country doesn't make as much of a profit anymore and likely collapses a lot of different parts of their economies that were relying on that extra income. Okay? And subsequently also makes a lot of money for the United States in the form of tariff revenue. So if countries want to sell shit to the American consumer, they have to pay basically call it a surcharge for that, right? America just pockets that money. And the prices don't get pushed back onto the consumer because they already have such a super high markup from their manufacturing anyway that the company can absorb the price, which is what's been happening. That's why the United States has pulled in like $100 billion of fucking revenue
it was quite
directly from tariffs.
clear that so-called emerging markets were going to become more important to businesses. And so I sort of played around with the idea, and I wrote a piece called "The World Needs Better Economic BRICS," and the rest is history, so to speak.
Eventually, it went on to be popular among the governments of these countries who held their initial summit and established BRIC in 2009.
The first ever BRIC summit is getting underway in Russia.
In 2010, South Africa was invited because it was a
See, this is what I was talking about. Up here is Russia. Over here is China. A lot of Russia's natural resources are produced kind of in this region, but a lot of Russia's population is over here in Western Russia, kind of closer to Eastern Europe, because it's not so damn cold over there, and that's kind of where everything is. So not a whole lot of people live over here, but there's a lot of natural resources over here. And so if they were to ever actually go to war, China would immediately take over all of those resources because they can. and Russia would kind of be fucked. So these two people specifically would end up working together. India, I think, will eventually end up siding with the United States. Brazil doesn't matter all that much.
Major economy.
Yeah, we kind of make a lot of stuff there, but ultimately, America's going to end up controlling the entire North American continent, and Brazil will be really insignificant at that point, even more than it already is.
On the African continent. Over time, more countries started expressing interest in joining BRICS. China became a major trading partner and a major foreign direct investor in many countries across the global south. And a lot of countries saw this as an opportunity to elevate themselves geopolitically, as they were not part of other multilateral groupings such as G20, for instance.
BRICS is an inclusive formation that has the ability to change the trajectory of the global south.
4 members joined.
Also in South Africa right now, they're like massacring Christians by the thousands. Just saying, Trump kind of, in a gangster move, like had the South African president over to the White House, and he was like, "Hey, so let's talk about this for a second," and just like put something on the fucking TV screen. Fucking big balls move, man. It was awesome. But yeah, no, South Africa's kind of shit. And while they are part of this whole BRICS thing right now, it looks like Egypt and Iran is too. Iran's fucking garbage. And Egypt is, I really don't want Egypt to be a bad guy, man. I love the Egyptian culture. Well, not the current Egyptian culture. I love the ancient Egyptian culture. You know, the one that built the pyramids and shit. I really don't want Egypt to be the bad guys. So I'm going to say India and China and Egypt both will end up siding with the United States probably. I have no basis for that other than it would make, if they want to survive, you know.
In 2024, and this year Indonesia joined as well. So now there are 10 countries.
Okay, moving on. Let's do this. Power.
10 countries equals economic power. Look at how the original BRICS have grown compared to the G7 in terms of global GDP since 2009. It surpassed the G7 in 2019. Now add in the expanded lineup, and its share is nearly 40%.
In terms of GDP by purchasing parity, it has overtaken the G7 countries. The trajectory is clear. BRICS countries are growing faster. Their populations are growing as well, for most of them.
This boom in population and wealth has also given the group more political might, which in turn has made more countries interested in joining.
BRICS' main objective is to challenge the established world order, which appeared after the end of...
Like I said, China's going for global dominance, and we can't let them win. I'm sorry. We need to get back to American expansionism, American imperialism, manifest destiny. Fuck it. I don't care. I don't care, okay? American crusade. Let's get it on, buddy.
The Cold War, Russia is definitely interested in more member states of BRICS, partly to offset its relative diplomatic isolation after 2022.
Power was aided by circumstance. Sanctions imposed by the US and Europe on Russia are one reason why trade among the bloc's first 5 members rose 40% to over $700 billion from 2021 to 2024.
Well, stop oppressing your fucking people. Like I'm saying, they act like these sanctions were completely unfounded, right? Like, even before Trump got into office, like, Biden had sanctions on fucking Russia. Before Biden got into office, the Trump administration from 2016 to 2020 had sanctions on like China and Russia and shit because they kept fucking oppressing people. They kept killing Christians. They kept throwing people into concentration camps. They kept throwing people in jail for shit that they said on social media. Well, maybe that was just in England, but I don't know. But regardless, man, like it's because of the oppression of their own people that the United States put sanctions on them. Like, and now it's escalated to tariffs to the tune of like 100% because fuck you, that's why. It's crazy, man. America stands for freedom, and it's the last bastion for it, and we need to stand up for it. And I think that the Trump administration is the first administration in a long time to actually do that. And I think it's causing a disruption in the plans that China had. And I do think that that's a good thing, but I think that we need to keep the pressure on because it's a very well-made plan.
Sanctions also contributed to an increasing amount of all this trade being done in local currencies. Look at the red line. That's use of the yuan bypassing the dollar in China's overseas transactions.
China represents more than 35% of Russia's external trade.
BRICS has even talked about a common currency.
Yep.
Overall, BRICS countries support reduced trade in US dollar as a tool, as a method to reduce overall Western economic dominance in the global economy.
China's influence within the BRICS Plus club can...
Are we paying attention yet? I already said they're trying to overtake the United States directly. It's not about global dominance, and as much as it is about global dominance, it's also about like directly taking over the United States. Like that's what it is. They're forming a group that they think is powerful enough to do so. But I think with the Trump administration switching up the way that the Western society does things, that it throws kind of a wrench in China's plan.
cannot be overstated.
China is the biggest, most powerful, richest country in the BRICS group. So
by a wide margin, man.
The BRICS works as an instrument for China to improve its economic and political power on the global stage.
Since before the beginning of the BRICS, Lula has always been enthusiastic about China. Brazil, under his first presidency in 2004, was one of the first countries to recognize China as a market economy.
Lula realized that China and Brazil had very complementary economies. China wants to have access to a huge consumer market, and it needs food security that Brazil can provide.
This graph shows Brazil's exports to the US. Now we're adding in exports to China. From 2009, China was Brazil.
That's because America gets most of its resources from other countries. Like we don't need to take it from Brazil, who doesn't necessarily have all that much. Like $100 billion isn't really shit in terms of any kind of resource.
Brazil's top exporting partner, and now it imports more too. So it's all good, right? Well, there are some hurdles. For Brazil and other BRICS Plus nations, the geopolitics of trade is complicated.
Trade relationships within BRICS are not as developed as, say, within the EU. BRICS is not a trading bloc or group. It wasn't meant to be one. Each country is dealing with the issue of tariffs individually.
Brazil doesn't really want to pick sides. Brazil wants to have the ability to trade with the US, trade with China, with the European Union, all at the same time.
Every time I see that cadaver on the world stage representing the United States, it just saddens me, man. I'm so glad we have a glorious golden orange man. Because I don't remember who was it. Wasn't it Steve Bannon called him like the prodigal son, or like the like heaven sent or something? Dude, they're deifying Trump now. Which no, look. I love Trump, but he's not a god. I'm not worshiping this man. I'm sorry.
A variety of tensions between different BRICS members have kept the group from forming a united front. But they have managed it with the New Development Bank, which finances projects across the global south and provides loans with fewer economic and political conditions compared to the World Bank.
It's not focused on advancing Western values and human rights issues in the same way.
Small at the moment, but with potential for growth. So even as the US steps back from its role as a global leader, the disparate nature of the BRICS Plus coalition is its weakness.
Yeah.
Although size gives it clout and opportunity, divisions may keep it from bending the global order towards its goals.
Oh, geez.
I think it's difficult for the BRICS countries to really pursue a joint path on the things that
It's even more difficult now because they can't predict what the Western countries are going to end up doing. They can't predict the way that the Western world order is going to operate anymore, because now that Trump is in charge, shit's changing.
really matter for them collectively as well as for the world. It's very effective as a symbolic grouping, but how that evolves is probably going to depend to some degree how on all their individual economies do, how they perceive the US is moving economically and politically, and how seriously they themselves want to move on big global issues like climate change, infectious diseases, global trade, and so on.
Yeah. See, China is forming a coalition of other countries in an effort to assert global dominance directly over the United States of America and over the Western countries, so the G7, NATO, that kind of stuff, right? And that will end up destroying the American economy. And like I said, Trump is pushing back on this. He's not going to allow that to happen. It's not Biden anymore. The way the Western society does things is changing. And so this is Trump pushing back on this.
I told anybody wants to be in BRICS, that's fine, but we're going to put tariffs on your nation. Everybody dropped out. They're all dropping out of BRICS. BRICS was an attack on...
Big balls move. This is 11 days ago. All right, this was... I told you, tariffs have completely changed the game for this shit because it's forcing them to rethink what's best for their nations, because they're not going to be able to start this new thing anymore and also still continue to operate in the global order. Just period.
On the dollar.
And America is going to become much richer than it already is, forcing these countries to not only make America richer, but do so while trying to overthrow the U.S., and it's not going to work because they're ultimately not going to be able to, because of how rich they're going to end up making the United States. Trump, big balls, slapped his dick on the table, walked in, no lube to everybody, all right?
And I said,
I'm so glad we have this man.
You want to play that game, I'm going to put tariffs on all of your product coming into the U.S. They said, like I said, we're dropping out of BRICS. And BRICS...
fucking no wonder.
Talk about it anymore.
U.S. President Donald Trump has claimed that the BRICS grouping was an attack on the dollar and insists his tariff policies force nations to reconsider their membership. In this video, we will break down what Trump said, which countries are affected, the implications for the U.S. dollar, and India's official stance on the matter. Speaking at the White House during a meeting with Argentine Prime Minister Javier Milei, Trump claimed, quote, "I told anybody who wants..."
Hold on. That was the summit in Brazil.
Trump claimed, quote, Javier Milei stance on the matter.
This was the summit in Brazil. I don't see... I know they were talking about Russia and China both not showing up to this, and I don't see either of them. Oh, dude, I don't see Xi or Putin here. Oh, shit. Oh, man, they didn't show up. That's crazy. That's the R and the C in BRICS. Like, China's undoubtedly the strongest country in every sense of the word in this group, and Russia's probably the second. India might be there too. I'm not really sure. But dude, oh man.
Speaking at the White House during a meeting with Argentine Prime Minister Javier Milei, Trump claimed, quote, "I told anybody who wants to be in BRICS, that's fine, but we're going to put tariffs on your nation. Everybody dropped out. They're all dropping out of BRICS."
I would say that I'll leave that up to my my economic people, but I like the dollar.
If they want to try us, they can try the Department of War.
I'm very strong on the dollar. And anybody who wants to deal in dollars, they have an advantage over people that aren't. But for the most part, we're keeping it that way. I think if Biden would have, Biden, that group would have gotten Kamala, you wouldn't have the dollar as your currency anymore. You wouldn't have a world domination by the dollar if I didn't win this election. And now the domination, like BRICS. I told anybody wants to be in BRICS, that's fine, but we're going to put tariffs on your nation. Everybody dropped out. They're all dropping out of BRICS. BRICS was an attack on the dollar. And I said, you want to play that game, I'm going to put tariffs on all of your product coming into the U.S. They said, like I said, we're dropping out of BRICS. And BRICS is like, they don't even talk about it anymore. Scott, you want to add to that, please?
Trump's comments come amid renewed global debate over the BRICS grouping's efforts to develop alternative trade mechanisms that could reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar, a move that analysts say would directly challenge America's financial dominance in global markets. The BRICS grouping,
without China and Russia there, dude, it's just a bunch of guys sitting around circle jerking. Like they have no power or sway at all politically without Russia and China there. Oh, dude. No, yeah, but we already learned earlier that it's absolutely an attack on the American dollar, and that's just the way that it is, and we can't allow it to be successful.
Prizing Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa has expanded significantly.
Like, I get why they're doing it. If I was Chinese or I was Russian, I'd probably be advocating for this to be successful, but I'm not. I'm American, and America needs to dominate.
Significantly in recent years, welcoming new members such as Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. Seen as a key coalition of emerging economies, this expansion has only intensified Washington's focus on maintaining dollar dominance. Trump, who has long used tariffs as a tool of foreign policy leverage, has previously threatened a 10% additional levy on any country seeking to join BRICS, raising concerns among major economies, including India, Brazil, China, and Russia, which are among the nations most affected by these U.S. tariffs. Trump's latest statements reinforce the ongoing tensions between Washington and emerging economies over global financial influence, highlighting how tariffs remain a central tool of American foreign policy, particularly when nations attempt to bypass the dollar in trade agreements or international settlements. As the BRICS bloc continues to explore alternatives to dollar-dominated trade, the global economic landscape remains uncertain, with analysts watching closely how Washington's tariff policies could reshape international alliances and the balance of financial power. For continuous updates on BRICS, U.S. trade policy, and global economic developments, make sure to subscribe to the Indian Express.
Yep, definitely subscribe to them. Also subscribe to the Financial Express on YouTube. They're the ones who originally posted this video. They did a great job. Really appreciate that. They're trying their best to expand their influence into the U.S. politics, right? They are trying their best. So at a time when U.S.-China relations are at their worst in decades, I fucking wonder why, Beijing is ramping up efforts to influence U.S. politics, media, and society. China is continuing a pattern of influence operations it began earlier this century in the Pacific Rim, seeking to shift narratives in its favor and promote pro-Beijing politicians, or sometimes just sow chaos and falsehoods. U.S. law enforcement authorities are preparing for influence efforts in the 2022 midterm elections. Obviously, you had to deal with that. This is also, by the way, from the Council of Foreign Relations. So what you mean to tell me is that we just know flat out that China influences U.S. elections, and it's not just whenever Trump's trying to become in office, because in the 2022 midterms, they were doing their best to try and influence the elections, presumably by throwing a bunch of money behind pro-China candidates. It would make more sense to me. Although Beijing's heightened efforts in the United States are relatively new, it has spent years developing strategies to influence politics and elections throughout the Pacific Rim. In Australia, Beijing-linked donors directly paid prominent politicians to attempt to shape Australian foreign policy more favorably toward China. Are we paying attention? Are we paying attention? Let me read that again. In Australia, Beijing-linked donors directly paid prominent politicians to attempt to shape Australian foreign policy more favorably toward China. What makes you think that they are not doing the same thing in the United States? What makes you think America is not doing the same thing in other countries? Countries do this. Okay? China's ramping up its efforts because it knows that the Trump administration is not for them. Obviously, this article was from 2022, but still, China is doing its best to throw as much money as possible at the American political climate so that it can sway it more toward Beijing, like pro-Beijing policies. Okay? China's media push in the United States, okay? In recent years, China has expanded its efforts beyond its near neighborhood and into the United States of America. According to reports filed by the Justice Department under the U.S. Foreign Agents Registration Act, okay, China has spent more over the past 6 years, $280 million, to influence U.S. politics than any other foreign country. So they've thrown more money at the U.S. than at any other country. Unlike Russia, which often targets individual politicians or just tries to create chaos, Beijing generally wants to change U.S. views of China more broadly. Okay, quote: "You might think in terms of the Russian intelligence services providing bursts of bad weather," unquote. This is from Ken McCollum, Director General of Britain's MI5 intelligence agency. So if you might think of Russia in terms of an intelligence services providing bursts of bad weather, China is changing the climate. That's kind of the metaphor here for the difference in what they're doing. Okay. Chinese state media organizations operating in the United States were responsible for a significant amount of money reported under the Foreign Agents and Registration Act, and state broadcast company reported more than half of the $280 million. Pro-Beijing actors, including private media, pro-Beijing actors are people like fucking John Cena, people like The Rock, people like Mark Ruffalo, people like those people, right? Basically, anybody that is against the Trump administration is probably pro-Beijing. I'm just being completely honest with you. Pro-Beijing actors, including private media outlets controlled by owners sympathetic to Beijing, now dominate the United States Chinese language television, print, and online media, a tactic China first perfected in New Zealand and Australia. Are we fucking paying attention? They're infiltrating it little by little over the course of 20 years so that nobody actually realizes. And then in 20 years, when the new generation, who they have been slowly grooming with TikTok, is now able to make decisions and kind of live in society, well, now there's going to be all sorts of people that are in very powerful positions at very powerful companies that are super pro-Beijing. And now, weirdly enough, China's just in control of the American economy. And without Trump, this would have just happened. The U.S., yada, 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 yada. In addition, Beijing often pays top publications to turn deceptive inserts that are really adversarials, but not clearly marked as such. A report released in September by the U.S.-based rights watchdog Freedom House said, quote, Chinese state media content reaches news consumers in the United States directly through offline and online paid inserts from China Daily or the Xinhua News Agency and national and regional news outlets such as Times Magazine, Los Angeles Times, USA Today, CNN, and Foreign Policy, unquote. There are also at least 2 U.S. radio stations that now broadcast Chinese Radio International propaganda, according to the Freedom House, okay? The FBI, this is targeting local U.S. politics specifically, local politics. So not only are they attacking it at the national level, they're attacking it at the state and even district levels as well, because they understand that you need to start at the bottom and work your way to the top, okay? China's not doing this haphazardly, okay? I said it before, they're doing this correctly, and if we don't stop them, it's going to fucking work. The FBI says it is now operating 7 times as many China-related investigations as it was 4 years ago. And in October, the Associated Press attained an unclassified U.S. intelligence advisory that said China likely is trying to help sway midterm races to, quote, hinder candidates perceived to be particularly adversarial to Beijing, unquote. Everything that we learned about China thus far has made me think that this is probably true. China's throwing a shit ton of money so that they can sway our politics in a way that would be pro-Beijing. Are we fucking paying attention yet? This is why Gavin Newsom decided to roll out the red carpet for Xi Jinping whenever he showed up. Okay? This is why Justin Trudeau, the former Prime Minister of Canada, said that we should emulate Beijing and that we should implement a government that is more like Beijing's because it's more efficient. You know, it's less freedoms, but it's more efficient. You know, we're able to get done exactly what it is that we want without, you know, any pushback from those pesky civilians. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, definitely subscribe on Rumble, subscribe on YouTube. I'm everywhere that videos are posted. You can follow me on X, and I stream once a week on Kick. So I look forward to seeing you guys. Bye.